All right, so this brings us to the end of our series. This is kind of a concluding episode. So essentially, what I'm saying is that I think we need another semi-revolution in the world of philosophy, and specifically the philosophy of science, and then a subsequent revolution within the world of science itself. So philosophy and science, and I think within the postmodern context, we need to take one more step where we don't just say, well, maybe things are not as certain as we thought they were, but we recognize that the implications of this is that there are multiple possible models, and we don't have a way to demonstrate that one or the other model is correct. So we need to work with simultaneously viable models, models of reality. So, maybe the naturalist reality is the correct one, or maybe the Platonic reality is the correct one, or maybe some other reality is the correct one. There has to be some kind of threshold of viability, and then those models that still fall within that threshold should be acknowledged as possibilities that might or might not turn out to be correct in the long term. And in the meantime, we need to take them all into consideration and figure out the implications of each one and figure out how that applies to science as well. So there, when Kant came up with his whole idea of the death of metaphysics, he called that a Copernican revolution in philosophy. And I think we've had another revolution since then with postmodernism, and I think there's yet another revolution to be had, where we acknowledge our own epistemic limitations and learn to live with them and to coexist. That's philosophy. But then in science as well, as I've pointed out, there needs to be a little bit more room that acknowledges the limitations of the scientific process and the fact that there's an intrinsic bias there towards naturalism, even though we don't know that that is the correct model. But we have to be careful in this revolution, because there's a very real possibility of abuse. I think there's very real forces that are trying to move science backwards towards the way things used to be back in the Dark Ages, where religion kind of dominated the science and pseudoscience was basically at the forefront. So there needs to be some kind of careful oversight, and we need to recognize that there's still abuse either way. So even if we don't allow the religious abuse, there's still abuse in a sense because of the bias, the naturalistic bias. So while we were careful not to open the door too widely for other options, we need to recognize that we still need to make that correction. But in doing this, even in spite of all the risk, I think it will open up new possibilities as well. I think it will give science new directions to explore, and it will remove barriers that exist between different segments of the population. I think a significant part of the world, of the religious world, will be more open to science, and there will be less scientific illiteracy as a result of the door being opened up a little bit more than it currently is to some of these other possibilities within the world of science. And it might mean that some of the leading figures within the scientific community need to be replaced or weighted out and replaced with people that are a little more aware of the shifts in philosophy and the fact that we cannot claim the kind of confidence people claimed back during the time of the Enlightenment. And then again, when it comes to the theory of evolution, all these things that I've been saying possibly apply there as well. And if we take the time to think through the scientific methodology, we can probably see that, especially in terms of the development of complexity, there's still an open field there that can be explored further, and there's alternative scientific models that can be developed to explore those possibilities. And it's just a matter of people on the atheistic side kind of working through their epistemic flaws to where they're approaching the question from the wrong angle, and people on the theist side moving away from their dualistic mindset and thinking of things in terms of the mechanistic, materialistic paradigm that science works with, and how that applies to the possibility of outside interference. And if people are able to do that and move beyond their biases, then there might be a way to move forward here. And I think overall, it will be of benefit to science and to society at large if we can make the steps forward. So I'm putting this series out there because I'm interested in people's feedback. I've had lengthy conversations on this already, so I'm pretty familiar with what the arguments are, but I'm hoping that maybe over time others would see value in what I'm saying here, and there'll be the possibility of crowdsourcing some of these ideas so that we can make them better and maybe even move forward towards some kind of advances in the world of philosophy, the philosophy of science specifically, and the world of science. And of course, all that will have implications on theology as well, because much of modern theology was developed during the modernist phase. So I think we're coming close to a time when we will have the tools to kind of reevaluate some of our foundational assumptions within the world of theology as well. All right, so if you have the patience to get all the way here, then I commend you, and hopefully you have something to comment and some input to the whole discussion, and we can go from there.